welcome back to another video. Israel started to escalate the tone with the Palestinian resistance, and they're constantly talking about escalating the war in Gaza after the ceasefire phase 1 ended, and we're headed towards phase 2 that's looking further and further away. Yesterday, multiple important things happened. Number one, there was a revelation that the United States administration was speaking with Hamas directly. Now there are more elaborations coming from the United States administration officials saying exactly who leaked this information and why, and how is that all linked with the statements of Donald Trump and him threatening with another genocide inside of Gaza, saying that if they don't release all of the Israeli prisoners of war, then they're all dead if they're not going to achieve a deal with Israel as the United States administration is proposing now. However, we're going to begin with Abu Ubaidah. Abu Ubaidah, the spokesperson of Al-Qassam brigades, the armed wing of Hamas, he made a statement today in which he stated a couple of important things. But the key highlights of the statements were, well, primarily the title. Hamas usually chooses its titles very carefully. And today they chose a title saying that the cunning or the plot is doomed to failure, hinting that Israel is trying to plot and have sort of tricks against the Palestinian resistance in an attempt to achieve what they haven't achieved with the genocide. And this is something that Hamas as a movement has been reiterating since the beginning of the genocide, especially after the temporary ceasefire and with all of the attempts to have another permanent ceasefire inside of Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu constantly stated that, we need to continue and apply the military pressure on Hamas so that we can get what we want exactly from them. Only military pressure will achieve results, to end up in a position where he is accepting the same ceasefire that Joe Biden proposed over 8 months ago, only with very slight amendments that do not include the red lines of the Palestinian resistance. What else did Abu Ubaidah say? Well, he said that we are ready to break whatever's remaining from our enemies. If they try and go into Gaza, then we are ready to break them in Gaza again. He also hailed and showed a lot of support for Yemen, and he also called on the international human rights organizations, anyone concerned about human rights, of course, to take more action, and also the Muslim world in relation to what's happening in Palestine. Otherwise, they're going to be the next victims. Now, if we start with the Hamas capability to fight Israel if they go in a war in Gaza, and is that war even likely in the form of a ground invasion? To understand the likelihood of the prospect of Israel going into another ground invasion inside of Gaza, we need to understand the Israeli preparations. Israel only has 2 divisions inside of Gaza now. They have more divisions on the borders with Lebanon, and they have more special units in the Syrian territories now, occupying Syrian territories. And the divisions that are on Gaza, they are not the most advanced divisions. Benjamin Netanyahu kept them there because he was struggling to maintain presence of other divisions inside of Gaza and other very old brigades in the Israeli army, seeing as he faced more and more resistance from them. So the divisions that are in the area surrounding Gaza are only 2. At the peak of the war, Israel had 5 inside of Gaza, and they still failed miserably. They are not the most experienced from Israel. Israel is struggling heavily with reservists. Benjamin Netanyahu is saying that, well, we want to have 400,000 reservists. The question is he going to be able to get them? Israel officially declared multiple times in Israeli mainstream media as well that over half of the reservists are refusing to follow orders of the Israeli army. More and more people are refusing conscription, and Benjamin Netanyahu is also failing miserably with the Israeli government as well to try and bring the Orthodox community to fight inside of Gaza. Now, in the past couple of days, we have seen small breaches inside of Israel. Small but serious, because at the end of the day, any breach means a human life lost. And no person should lose his life over Israeli political greed or any cunning moves to try and apply pressure on the population inside of Gaza. However, that's what Israel has been doing all along, and they have the backing of the United States administration. Which leads me to the United States administration and the statements that we heard yesterday from Donald Trump. Donald Trump met with some of the Israeli families of the prisoners of war inside of Gaza. And then he came out with this very angry statement, Hamas needs to take the deal. To the Gazan population, a beautiful future awaits you. But if you don't accept the deal, you're all dead. Okay. And there are a couple of things to address in Donald Trump's statements that he made yesterday and in which context they came. Number one, there was a statement before that, or a report, that the United States administration is having direct talks with Israel. It was initially reported on Axios, but then multiple mainstream media outlets started to report it as well, clearly indicating that the United States indeed sat down with Hamas. Now, some of the reports said that it was primarily to talk about releasing the United States dual nationals, Israeli Americans, from Gaza. But the report itself, the original report, said that no, they were actually talking about a comprehensive deal between the United States and Hamas. And yesterday we spoke about the significance of that and the fact that this amounts to a US recognition in the legitimacy of Hamas as a movement, the fact that Hamas is a very powerful movement inside of Gaza, and that even if you want to talk about the future of Gaza, despite all of the statements that are coming on mainstream media and by politicians as well, you're going to have to talk to them. And the United States is doing that. And I also spoke about how that is linked to the United States disapproval of the way Israel is conducting the negotiations with Hamas, and that these negotiations are not bringing any results. Today, there was more elaboration. There was a report coming in saying that the United States believes that Israel leaked information about direct talks with Hamas in an attempt to sabotage them. And that report came in the Times of Israel, quoting US government officials. So these officials are saying the talks between the United States administration and Hamas, they were supposed to be secret, but Israel published and leaked this information so that they can fail. What do we understand from this? We understand that Israel is not happy with the fact that the United States administration is talking with Hamas. Yesterday, some of the reports stated that, well, yeah, Israel knew beforehand, and then later on we had our opinion. The Netanyahu office said that, yeah, we told them exactly what we think about this. But the fact that now these government officials from the United States are saying that no, Israel actually wants to sabotage them, this means that Israel was not happy with these talks, and it also believes that these talks could lead to something that's not in the benefit of Israel. And that's why they primarily tried to sabotage them. Going back to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, of course, met with the Israeli prisoners of war, calling them hostages. The remaining Israeli prisoners of war inside of Gaza, the vast majority of them are IDF terrorists from the Gaza division who were taken by Hamas on the 7th of October, after they took down the whole Gaza division in just a couple of hours. Yet, in mainstream media and politicians and people like Trump, they're trying to still spin things around and say that these people are hostages. You're talking about soldiers. We're no longer talking about hardly any civilians remaining inside of Gaza. And of course, the Palestinian resistance, they're not going to give them for free. And of course, he's ignoring the thousands of Palestinian hostages who were kidnapped by Israel under what Israel calls administrative detention, in many cases with nothing against them, just because Israel feels like arresting them, using this as a method of abuse against the Palestinian society, primarily in the West Bank, to apply pressure on them, to torture them, to make their life as difficult as possible. And then he went on to talk about Gaza and the deal and accept the deal, hinting that there's something being proposed again directly, apart from the things that are being made public. But that deal or any proposal that came from the United States so far to Hamas in these secret but now public talks, they haven't been successful yet. Accept the deal or all of you are dead. Now, the baffling thing is, a few days ago, Donald Trump started to humiliate Volodymyr Zelensky. It was plastered on every mainstream media outlet, or everyone was talking about it, you know, Trump humiliating Zelensky. But Trump, the United States president, threatening a whole population with death, and his little poodle, Marco Rubio, saying that we will back Israel, and other officials in the administration, it's as if it's nothing, you know. It's very normal for a US president to say that, you know, we're going to kill all of the population if they're in Gaza. But we're very worried about the Israeli population and the Israeli hostages, as they call them. They need to be released. Now, again, with these statements of Donald Trump, we need to measure how his words correlate and connect with his actions on the ground. With his actions on the ground, Steve Witkoff is making more statements now. He told Israel yesterday or the day before, don't continue down the war up until I come. We need to talk, we need to reach a deal. Today he also made more clarification. I don't care what it's called, phase 2, phase 3. All I know is that we need to get a deal. And then again, they're applying pressure on Hamas. All of this rhetoric, all of this tone that's coming from the new United States administration under Donald Trump, it was already repeated before. As much as Donald Trump would like to portray himself in a different manner than how Joe Biden was, Antony Blinken was repeating the same things over a year ago. And Joe Biden, accept a deal, you have a good deal, no better deal is going to come. And at one point, Hamas accepted the deal and Israel refused it. And guess what? The United States administration did not apply pressure on Israel. They continued to try and apply pressure on Hamas to accept this deal. And then when they did, they stopped saying anything because Israel did not. And there was even a United States, a United Nations Security Council resolution. And it passed. And Israel did not comply. Of course, we're still not talking about the ICJ and the ICC, by the way. A country committing genocide and Benjamin Netanyahu being officially a war criminal by international law. And then the United States going and saying, oh no, let's actually impose some sanctions on the ICC because they dared to chase Benjamin Netanyahu and call him a war criminal. And of course, they have the Hague Act in case any action is being taken. So, lots of hypocrisy, and in many cases, the new administration is similar to the previous administration. However, like I said before, it's very important to look at the actions on the ground. So far, despite all of these threats, Israel hasn't restarted the war. Israel has breaches, like they had breaches during the ceasefire, like they have breaches still to this day in Lebanon, like they've always breached any agreement. You're talking about a fake entity that was established on fakery and grand theft, mass theft and mass slaughter and terror. No one is expecting them to comply completely with agreements. That's not surprising. However, they did not fully restart the war. And the new Israeli IDF chief of staff also spoke about the prospect of getting back to the war. However, he's mentioning that it's a priority to get back the Israeli prisoners of war. Today, the committee in charge of the Israeli families of the prisoners of war still held in Gaza and were held before, said that, well, we can deal with Hamas at any point, but we can't delay the release of the Israeli prisoners of war because they can die. And Abu Ubaidah, in his speech earlier on today, also said that any continuation and escalation of the war will lead to some of them being killed. He's saying that as if it's a fact. And previously, when Israel was attacking Gaza, well, they were killing Israelis every few weeks. The Palestinian resistance would come out and say, yeah, today this and this was killed, these many Israelis were killed, and Israel in total killed approximately 30% of all of their prisoners of war inside of Gaza. And the biggest numbers were during the early days of the war because of their intense bombardment inside of Gaza. So the way I'm viewing what's happening now is that Israel and the United States administration are trying to extract more from Hamas and from the Palestinian resistance before going ahead with phase 2 of the war. And the reason that I'm saying that is, well, Israel already conceded, Israel already submitted by withdrawing from the majority parts of Gaza, by withdrawing from the Netzarim corridor, by allowing over 500,000 of Palestinians to go back to the north, and by allowing thousands of trucks of aid to go into Gaza, despite them closing the borders again now. By allowing the Palestinian resistance to have a time to breathe, to restructure, to reorganize, to rearm, to regroup. And they're confirming that they have indeed regrouped, rearmed, re-recruited more than what they had before, and planting and preparing the ground for another Israeli invasion that will be even more lethal than the previous invasion. And any attack from Israel coming on the Palestinians, if you're talking about airstrikes, for example, that's going to achieve nothing but more sympathy with the Palestinian people. On the ground, they failed. They failed to achieve any of their military objectives. How are they going to achieve them? Only with airstrikes. It's impossible. The only thing that they will achieve is more outrage from the people, more pressure being applied on them, and more fronts being reopened again. Yemen will automatically reopen. They'll probably close the Red Sea again. And Iran still has a looming warning of True Promise 3. And guess what? They did attack Israel twice, unlike other countries who said many things but did not act. Iran actually said and did act. So we need to take that threat seriously. And the question is that what Israel wants? And is that what the United States administration wants? These are the questions. And again, with the situation that is proving day after day that it's going to continue to be dramatic and unknown with more mysteries, we will know exactly what's going to happen in the right time. It either can be as early as in the next few days, we're all of a sudden going to have a breakthrough, like we had a breakthrough before the ceasefire agreement took place, or it can be delayed, and we can have an escalation, and we can see a repeat of the same thing we saw before, less, more, all of that is possible. However, like I said, what I do believe Israel and the United States are doing is to apply pressure on Hamas to extract some positions from them, some of what they want politically, before having to go into phase 2, confirm that the war has indeed ended, and having several years of ceasefire or a deal that will be a longer deal between Israel and the Palestinian resistance.